My neighbor knocked at my door at 5 a.m. and said, "Don't worry." By 11 a.m., the police arrested me. At exactly 5:02 a.m., someone knocked on my door. Not the polite kind, not the angry kind either. It was slow, careful, almost respectful. I remember checking my phone first. No missed calls, no messages. The sky outside my bedroom window was still dark, that dull blue-gray color that only exists before sunrise. The world felt paused, like everyone else was still asleep except me, and whoever was standing on the other side of my door. The knock came again. I pulled on a hoodie, my heart already beating faster than it should have been. No one ever visits at that hour unless something is wrong. Very wrong. When I opened the door, it was my neighbor, Mark. He lived 2 houses down. Mid-40s. Quiet. Polite. The kind of guy who waved but never talked much. Lawns always trimmed. Trash bins always out on time. I'd never had a real conversation with him longer than 30 seconds. He stood there holding a paper coffee cup, like he'd already been awake for hours. "Hey," he said calmly. Too calmly. "Sorry to wake you." I frowned. "Is everything okay?" He looked past me into my house, then back at my face. His eyes weren't scared. They weren't nervous. They were certain. "Yeah," he said. "Everything's fine." Then he smiled slightly and added the sentence that would replay in my head 1,000 times later. "Don't worry." I waited for him to explain. He didn't. Instead, he took a step back from the door. "Just wanted to check on you," he said. "That's all. That's all." I repeated. "It's 5 in the morning." "I know," he said, nodding. "I won't keep you." He turned and walked away before I could ask another question. I stood there for a full minute, staring at his back as he disappeared into the darkness. Something felt off. Not dangerous. Not threatening. Just wrong. I locked the door, went back inside, and tried to sleep. I failed. By 8 a.m., my anxiety had turned into a tight knot in my stomach. I replayed the moment over and over. The knock. His tone. That calm smile. Why would anyone wake someone up just to say don't worry? At 10:47 a.m., my doorbell rang again. This time it wasn't slow. It was sharp. Loud. Official. When I opened the door, there were 2 police officers standing on my porch. "Are you my name?" one of them asked. "Yes," I said, confused. "What's going on?" "Sir," the other officer said, already reaching for his cuffs, "you're under arrest." My mind went blank. "For what?" I asked. They didn't answer right away. As they turned me around and locked the cold metal around my wrists, I saw something across the street that made my blood run cold. Mark was standing on his porch, watching, calm, silent, certain, and for the first time since 5 a.m. I understood something terrible. That knock wasn't a warning. It was a goodbye. The moment the handcuffs clicked shut, the world stopped making sense. "I think there's been a mistake," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might break my ribs. "You haven't told me what I did." The taller officer didn't look at me. He guided me down the steps like he'd done this 1,000 times before. "You can explain everything downtown," he said. As they walked me toward the patrol car, I turned my head again toward Mark's house. He was still there. Same posture. Same calm expression. Coffee cup in his hand like it was just another normal morning. When our eyes met, he gave me a small nod. Not sympathy. Not apology. Acknowledgement. The backseat of a police car has a smell you never forget. Plastic. Old fabric. Something metallic. The door slammed shut, sealing me inside my new reality. I kept asking questions. What's the charge? Who reported this? Can I call a lawyer? Silence. The ride to the station took 15 minutes, but it felt like an hour. Every second my mind raced through possibilities. I had no criminal record. No fights. No drugs. No shady friends. I was boring. Normal. That's why none of this made sense. At the station they took my fingerprints. Mugshot. Belt. Shoelaces. Phone. When they finally sat me down in a small gray interrogation room, a different officer walked in. Older. Calm. The kind of calm that scares you. He placed a folder on the table. "Do you know why you're here?" he asked. "No," I said honestly. And I need you to tell me. He opened the folder and slid a photograph toward me. My stomach dropped. It was my backyard, specifically the tool shed. And taped to the next page was a picture of a woman I had never seen before. Blonde, early 30s, bruised face. She went missing 3 weeks ago, the officer said. Her car was found abandoned 2 blocks from your house. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. You think I did something to her? I asked. I don't even know who that is. The officer leaned back. That's interesting, he said. Because your neighbor says otherwise. My chest tightened. Which neighbor? He didn't answer immediately. He flipped another page. A written statement. Mark's name was right at the top. He says you argued with her late one night, the officer continued. He says he heard screaming. He says you threatened her. That's a lie, I said instantly. I've never had anyone over like that. Mark claims you asked him for help, the officer said calmly. Says you were panicking. Says you told him everything would be fine if he stayed quiet. My hands were shaking now. No, I whispered. That's not true. The officer studied my face. You know what's strange, he said. Mark came forward voluntarily. At 5 a.m. My heart stopped. At 5 a.m.? I repeated. Yes, he said. Said he couldn't sleep. Said his conscience wouldn't let him rest. I felt dizzy. That knock. That smile. Don't worry. It all clicked together like a sick puzzle. He wasn't checking on me. He was making sure I was home. The officer closed the folder. Search warrant's already been approved, he said. Your property is being searched as we speak. My mouth went dry. Then you'll see I'm innocent, I said. There's nothing there. He stood up. We'll see. They left me alone in that room for what felt like forever. No clock. No window. Just buzzing fluorescent lights and the sound of my own breathing. I kept replaying every interaction I'd ever had with Mark. The polite waves. The small smiles. The quiet distance. How does someone you barely know destroy your life before noon? An hour later, the door opened again. Same officer. Different expression. They found something, he said. My heart sank into my stomach. What? I asked, barely able to speak. He hesitated. Items belonging to the missing woman, he said. In your shed. I felt like I was falling. That's impossible, I said. Someone put them there. He looked at me for a long second. Do you want to guess who? I didn't answer. Because I already knew. The arrest that made no sense. The handcuffs clicked shut with a sound I'd only ever heard on TV. Metal. Final. Unforgiving. Wait, this has to be a mistake, I said, my voice shaking despite my effort to stay calm. You haven't even told me what I did. One of the officers gently but firmly pulled my arms behind my back and guided me toward the porch steps. You'll have a chance to ask questions downtown, he said. Downtown. That single word made everything suddenly real. As they walked me past my living room window, I noticed my curtains were still open. My bed unmade. My coffee machine halfway through brewing the cup I never got to drink. A normal morning cut clean in half. Outside, the neighborhood had started to wake up. A jogger slowed down. A woman across the street paused while loading groceries into her car. Someone was watching from behind their blinds. And then there was Mark. Still standing there. And then there was Mark. Still standing there. Same posture. Same calm face. Same hands in his pockets. Our eyes met. I expected him to look away. He didn't. Instead, he gave me a small nod, almost respectful, like someone acknowledging a job well done. That's when fear truly set in. Inside the police car, the back seat smelled like disinfectant and old fabric. The door slammed shut, cutting off the outside world in one violent motion. I leaned back, heart pounding. What am I being arrested for? I asked again. The officer in the passenger seat glanced back at me. Arson, he said. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Arson. I repeated. You've got the wrong guy. I've never even lit a campfire in my life. No one laughed with me. The driver adjusted his mirror, met my eyes for half a second, then looked back at the road. A house fire last night, he said. 2 blocks from here. My stomach dropped. A man died. The laughter vanished instantly. Interrogation room. The room was smaller than I expected. Gray walls. A metal table. 2 chairs. A camera in the corner blinking red like an unblinking eye. They removed the cuffs but didn't remove the pressure. A detective entered, late 50s, tired eyes, coffee breath. He placed a folder on the table and slid it toward me. Inside were photographs. Burned walls. Collapsed beams. A blackened doorway. And then one photo made my chest tighten. A body bag. You were seen near the property last night, the detective said calmly. Around 11:30 p.m. That's impossible, I said instantly. I was home. I went to bed before midnight. Anyone who can confirm that? I hesitated. I lived alone. The detective nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer. We also have security footage, he continued, from a nearby convenience store. A man matching your description buying lighter fluid at 10:58 p.m. He slid another photo toward me. The image was grainy. But the jacket? It looked like mine. My mouth went dry. That's not me, I said. I've never owned lighter fluid. The detective leaned back. Funny thing, he said. Your neighbor says otherwise. My heart skipped. Which neighbor? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mark, the detective said. He says you borrowed some from him earlier that evening. The room felt suddenly smaller. Hotter. He's lying, I said. I barely know him. The detective stared at me for a long moment. Then why did he come forward so quickly? He asked. Why did he knock on your door at 5 in the morning? My blood turned cold. You know about that? I whispered. Oh yes, the detective said. He told us everything. The statement. According to Mark's statement, I had been acting strange for weeks. I complained about a man who ruined my life. I talked about wanting revenge. I borrowed lighter fluid. I left my house late at night. Every word was carefully chosen. Every sentence sounded believable. That's a setup, I said desperately. He's framing me. The detective closed the folder. People don't usually frame their neighbors for murder, he said quietly. Especially not at 5 in the morning. I thought of that calm smile again. That certainty. Mark hadn't been worried. Because he knew exactly how the day would end. Lockup. They put me in a holding cell just after noon. Concrete bench. Metal bars. A clock that ticked louder than my thoughts. I sat there replaying everything. The knock. The words. The timing. Mark hadn't come to warn me. He'd come to make sure I was home. To make sure I didn't run. At 1:17 p.m., a public defender arrived. She flipped through my case file and sighed. This doesn't look good, she said honestly. Your neighbor is a strong witness. I swallowed hard. Then you don't know him, I said. But I'm going to prove he did this. She looked at me with a mix of sympathy and doubt. People always say that, she replied. As she left, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't fighting a misunderstanding. I was fighting a man who had planned this long before he knocked on my door. And I still had no idea why. The man everyone trusted. Jail doesn't feel real at first. Feels temporary. Like a waiting room where someone will eventually walk in and say, sorry, wrong guy. But hours passed. Then night came. And no one came to fix the mistake. The cell smelled like sweat and disinfectant. My cellmate was asleep on the concrete bench, his back turned to me, snoring softly like this was just another Tuesday night. For me, it felt like my life had been ripped out of my hands and tossed into a metal cage. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying Mark's face. That calm nod. That quiet confidence. He hadn't acted like a witness. He'd acted like someone checking off the final item on a list. Day 2 jail visit. The next morning, my public defender returned. Her name was Rachel. She didn't smile this time. They upgraded the charge, she said, sitting across from me in the visitor room. My stomach twisted. Murder, she continued. 1st degree. I felt dizzy. That's insane, I whispered. She slid a photo toward me. A charred ID card barely readable. The victim's name was Thomas Keller, she said. Any idea who that is? I stared at the name, and then my heart stopped. I know him, I said slowly. Rachel raised an eyebrow. How? He used to live here, I replied. In this neighborhood. Years ago. That was when everything clicked into a horrible twisted shape. The house that burned. Thomas Keller wasn't just some random man. He was Mark's brother-in-law. And suddenly Mark's calm made sense. Because this wasn't random. It was personal. I remembered something from years back. Police cars. Late-night arguments. Shouting coming from Mark's house. People whispered about Thomas being violent. About money. About family disputes. Then one day Thomas disappeared. And now he was dead. Burned. Rachel leaned forward. Did you ever have problems with him? No, I said quickly. Barely spoke to him. But Mark did. She wrote something down. That's interesting, she said. Because Mark told police you were obsessed with Thomas. My fists clenched. He's lying, I said again. He's projecting. Rachel exhaled slowly. Then we need proof. Jail pressure. Word travels fast inside. By the second night, other inmates knew what I was charged with. Arson killer. One of them muttered as I passed. Another spat near my feet. A man died in that fire. And in jail, guilt is assumed. I stopped sleeping. Every time my eyes closed, I saw flames. Not because I caused them, but because Mark wanted me to burn instead of him. The first crack. On day 4, Rachel returned with news. Mark's timeline doesn't match, she said quietly. My head snapped up. What do you mean? He claims he was home all night, she continued. But cell tower data places his phone near the burned house at 11:12 p.m. Hope flickered. Then why am I still here? Because, she said carefully, he claims he was looking for you. Of course he did. Always helpful. Always concerned. Always one step ahead. The motive. Rachel leaned closer. There's more, she said. Mark took out a life insurance policy on Thomas. Large one. My heart raced. How large? $700,000. Everything went quiet. He blamed Thomas for ruining his family, she added. Debt. Threats. Violence. I swallowed hard. And now Thomas is dead, I said. And I'm the perfect villain. Rachel nodded. He needed someone clean. Quiet. No criminal record. Someone like me. The real reason for the 5 a.m. knock. I finally understood. Mark knocked at my door to place himself in the story. To create a connection. To make sure police asked, why would he visit you? And the answer would be, because he was worried about me. That knock wasn't random. It was strategy. The man who cried for me. Courtroom air feels different. It's heavy. Judgmental. Like the walls themselves are waiting to decide whether you deserve freedom or a cage. I walked in wearing an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed at my waist. Cameras weren't allowed, but eyes were everywhere. Strangers whispering. Jurors studying my face like I was a puzzle with missing pieces. And then I saw him. Mark. Sitting in the front row. Neatly dressed. Clean shave. Hands folded like he was attending church. When our eyes met, his face changed instantly. Concern. Sympathy. Pain. It was a performance so perfect I almost believed it myself. Opening statements. The prosecutor didn't waste time. This was a crime of rage, he said. A man who felt wrong took justice into his own hands. Every word pointed at me. Then Rachel stood. This case is built on assumption, she said calmly. And one very convenient witness. She didn't say his name. She didn't have to. Mark takes the stand. When Mark was called, the room leaned forward. He walked to the stand slowly. Like every step carried emotional weight. I didn't want to testify, he said, voice shaking. But I owe it to the victim. He wiped his eyes. An Oscar-worthy pause. Then he looked at me. I tried to help him, Mark continued. That's why I went to his house that morning. The jurors nodded. Of course he did. Why did you say don't worry? The prosecutor asked. Mark swallowed hard. Because I knew something terrible had happened, he said. And I didn't want him to panic. Lie. Perfectly delivered. Cross-examination. Rachel stood. Mr. Mark, she said. You say you were worried about my client. Yes. So worried you didn't call the police? Mark hesitated. I was scared. Scared of what? That he might hurt himself. A murmur passed through the courtroom. Rachel nodded thoughtfully. And yet, she said, you found time to calmly drink coffee. Mark stiffened. I drink coffee every morning. Rachel smiled slightly. No further questions. Not yet. Jail that night. Back in my cell, my hands shook. He was winning. I could see it in the jurors' faces. Mark wasn't just a witness. He was the story's hero. And I was the villain who stayed quiet too long. The unexpected visitor. That night, a guard stopped outside my cell. You got a visitor, he said. At this hour? He shrugged. The visitor room was dim. And then I saw him. Mark. Sitting across the glass. Smiling. The confession without words. You don't belong here, he said softly into the phone. I stared at him. Why? I asked. Why me? He tilted his head. Wrong place, he replied. Right life. My blood ran cold. You planned this, I whispered. He smiled. But you won't prove it, he said. Because no one wants to believe a quiet man could be evil. He stood up. Oh, he added casually. And don't worry. The guards pulled him away. That was when I realized something important. Mark wasn't afraid of the trial, because he believed it was already over. The truth that couldn't burn. The last day of the trial felt unreal, like walking into a room where your fate was already written. You just didn't know whether it said free or finished. Mark sat in the same place, same posture, same calm face. He didn't look nervous. He looked relieved, like a man who had already moved on with his life. Rachel leaned toward me and whispered, today we either break him or we lose. The witness no one expected. The prosecution rested. Then Rachel stood. We call our final witness. A pause. Officer Daniel Reyes. A uniformed police officer walked in. Middle-aged. Serious. The jury straightened. Officer Reyes had been the first responder at the fire. Rachel asked calmly, Officer, did you collect any electronic evidence at the scene? Yes, he replied. A damaged mobile phone. And whose phone was it? Reyes looked directly at Mark. Mark's. The courtroom froze. Mark's head snapped up for the first time. That phone was initially mislogged due to heat damage, Reyes continued. But we recovered partial data. Rachel nodded. What time was that phone last active? Reyes swallowed. 11:14 p.m. near the burned house. A murmur exploded through the courtroom. Mark's lawyer jumped up. Objection. Overruled, the judge said sharply. The message that ended everything. Rachel took a breath. Officer, was there any readable message? Yes. What did it say? Reyes opened a folder. It was a draft message. Never sent. He read aloud. If you don't leave town tonight, I'll end this myself. Silence. The kind of silence that crushes lungs. Rachel looked at Mark. And who was that message addressed to? Reyes answered quietly. Thomas Keller. Mark's face lost all color. The final collapse. Mark stood up suddenly. That's out of context, he shouted. The judge banged the gavel. Sit down. But it was too late. Rachel delivered the final blow. Mr. Mark, she said. You knocked on my client's door at 5 a.m. not to help him. She paused. But to make sure he was home. To make sure your story had a witness. To make sure you looked like the concerned neighbor. Not the killer. Mark's mouth opened. No sound came out. For the first time he looked afraid. The verdict. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Longest 3 hours of my life. When they returned I couldn't breathe. On the charge of first-degree murder. My hands trembled. We find the defendant not guilty. I collapsed. Before I could even stand, the judge turned. Mark Keller, you are hereby remanded into custody for arrest on suspicion of murder, arson, and falsifying evidence. Mark didn't resist. As they cuffed him, his eyes met mine one last time. No confidence. No calm. Just regret. Epilogue. 6 months later. I moved. New city. New life. One evening a letter arrived. From prison. It was from Mark. One line only. I thought fire erased everything. I folded the letter and threw it away. Because some truths don't burn. They survive. And sometimes they knock on your door at 5 a.m. I walked out of that courtroom a free man, but something inside me was still burning. Because the same neighbor who told me don't worry at 5 a.m. was now standing in handcuffs staring at the floor. He thought fire could erase the truth. He thought one calm smile could destroy an innocent life. But here's what he never understood. Some lies survive for hours. Some survive for days. But the truth always waits. And sometimes, it doesn't scream. It doesn't run. It just knocks on your door. Right before everything falls apart.